And Sam, just linked to that in terms of standing up for doing the right thing. You can do that bilaterally, and you can do it through the multilateral fora. And just coming to the multilateral fora, the International Religious Freedom Alliance, or Belief, was something you set up. I remember having that conversation with you in the Netherlands. Say, Raymond, this is the vision. We want to set it up. And a few months down the line, here you were in Washington, D.C. with Secretary of State Pompeo in February the 5th, with 26 other states, with like-minded countries coming together to stand up and champion freedom of religion or belief in a tangible way. So how did you get the vision to bring about and set up that alliance in the first place?
Well, I think it was divine inspiration. I honestly do. But you could then, once the vision is put out there, you can see a number of countries saying, yeah, I mean, we're used to economic alliances. We know how to build economic alliances. We're used to military alliances. We know how to build that. We have apparatus that do both of those things. We're not used to kind of a human rights alliance. And how do you stand those up in an international forum? We lump all the human rights together, but then it's hard to get them you've got to break these down, I think, into their component parts and stand for them. And if you do, it will lift the whole human rights project. So our thinking was, if we could get this one put together, an alliance, there's some 40 countries now that participate, not all full members of it, but 40 countries that participate in this Religious Freedom Alliance, and make it effective, you can then start to stand up international groups, alliances of nations, around other key human rights topics like freedom of speech or freedom of assembly. The thing about it is, on religion, you have a natural constituency in the world that is saying yes and amen to you fighting for it. So it's like the countries can lead a grassroots movement to press for this. And I've been very pleased. It stood up. The Biden administration supports the alliance. It's continuing to move forward. I hope it can continue to have high level engagement. I think that's one of the key pieces, that you got to have people at the political level be willing to engage and to fight for it.
I know with the United Kingdom's recent foreign policy and defense review, in that it made it very clear that the United Kingdom will champion freedom of religion or belief through the work of the alliance. So the United Kingdom, with its own foreign policy and defense review, made it very clear that it will champion this through the work and working with partners of the alliance. So tangible results, multilaterally coming together, I think it's where we need to be. Can I just ask specifically on the alliance? There was real success on getting religious prisoners released from around the world, and now you have different countries taking different leads on that. For example, Australia has taken the lead of getting blasphemy abolished and the death penalty. So results and action linked to different countries taking a lead at different levels. The US was leading on the misuse of technology. So what further things do you think can be done with the alliance?
I think we've scratched the surface on it. I see Estonia in particular was leading on the topic of the protection of religious sites in conflict zones, because often they get targeted for misuse and abuse in those areas. I think we need to talk about educational systems, because often educational systems in countries are used to push against religious minorities by the government in how they're teaching their own students. And I think we need to highlight and put that forward. I'd love to see us get to a situation where you eliminate the death penalty for blasphemy and apostasy laws. I think the laws ought to be eliminated altogether, but to get rid of the death penalty for apostasy or blasphemy. And to me, these are a series of key ones, but I'd like to see us focus more, say, on the Tibetan Buddhist and allowing them to freely practice and put more strength behind that. And when individual cases come up, the Catholic bishop in Belarus was kept from returning home after this last uprising of the people against the government there. We need to push that he would be able to return home to his own country. I think you can get those specific cases that could be very helpful too.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it was Archbishop Kondrowicz who was not being allowed to return back, and the alliance issued a statement on that as well. And the same thing with in Nigeria with the Mubarak Bala case. Specific case, Nigeria, the alliance working together to bring about change and ensure individuals can practice their faith freely and openly. Can I just ask specifically on that? You touched on the blasphemy laws. 10 countries around the world which still have the death penalty for blasphemy. We saw real change come about in Sudan. You've touched on it before. We had the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Pope Francis, the US, Canada, UK, all working together to bring about change in Sudan using the different levers available. Which other countries would you say could the same be applied to with regards to using the different leverages that we have to see tangible results as we saw in Sudan? One that comes up that's been difficult to bring about change is Eritrea. How do you address countries like Eritrea?
I think Eritrea would be a good one to work on because not very many people have tried to do much. And it's a real authoritarian North Korean style government that's there. I think that'd be a good one. Pakistan is one that I traveled to Pakistan a lot. I love the Pakistani people, but boy, they've been really rough in this human rights space. And I think we really need to do a lot more focus there. Nigeria, unfortunately, that place could just explode if the global community doesn't really get more engaged. And that's going to be a fight between Christianity and Islam, or it's going to be used as that kind of fight. Yeah. We really need to get there because that could put that whole Sahel region on fire. And you've got these terrorist groups flying into the region. It's becoming like a terrorist convention region, seeing this as their big next move to create the next caliphate that they can rally around and explode around the world. That's one that needs a very active Western engagement in now before it goes up into flames.
You're absolutely right. There's a number of these countries: Pakistan, democratic country; Uganda, democratic country; Nigeria, democratic country; Korea, democratic country. And I was looking at what's been going on with some churches in that part of the world. So you've got democracies where there's issues of persecution of individuals for their faith or belief, and then you've got clear-cut authoritarian states where there is a real serious issue of persecution of individuals for their faith or belief. And he's making sure that with these countries, whether it's the UK through the Commonwealth, or whether it's through the other bilateral relationships or through the multilateral fora, Human Rights Council, we can bring about that real change. Because on Pakistan, I was looking at the report by Maurice Tadros from CREED, who said of particular concern was the scapegoating of religious minorities in India, where Muslims were referred to as the spreaders of the jihadi virus, and in Pakistan, where the Shia Muslims were accused of carrying the Shia virus. So two democracies over here, both with regard, having issues where minorities were being targeted through disinformation. Real issue which has to be addressed by international partners working together.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is, Rehman, is I think we're just on the leading edge of this field developing and the global community taking action. We've agreed since 1948, the global community has religious freedom as a fundamental human right. It's in the original Human Rights Charter, but there's not been much done with it. Now, I think you're finally kind of starting to see the focus in a number of the countries focus on this particular issue. And I think if we do, I think we can have enormous success and it will tangibly help billions of people around the world that are persecuted. So to me, this is one of those, as a policymaker, one of those areas I really want to work in because it's high value. It's at the leading edge. We get some push taking place here. We could see a lot of the people in the world live better lives. Billions of people in the world live better lives.
Got it. And so I'm just coming on to the final two topics. The other one, which we have, is how important will freedom of religion or belief be on the agenda for the new Biden administration? And the reason I say that is I was looking at a report, an article by Susan Crabtree at the Real Clear Politics, and she said the Biden administration will shift away from an explicit focus on following Secretary of State Blinken's comments at the release of the State Department's annual human rights report, in which he stated that human rights are to be co-equal, and there is no hierarchy that makes some rights more important than others. Considering the bipartisan approach to FORB across the board over the years in the United States, where do you see the Biden administration taking FORB in light of the recent comments that have been made?
I think what you'll see is them go back to the same what kind of tactic and style they had during the Obama years, which is to support FORB, but not to highlight or elevate it. What happened in the Trump years is that the Trump administration looked at this and said, this is so fundamental that if we can get it right, it's going to help us in the other human rights. And so they said, look, we're taking a different tact in that. We think all human rights as identified by the UN Charter of Human Rights, and as we have in our Constitution, are fundamental rights. They are fundamental rights.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like building a house. You got to lay your cornerstone. That's the first one you lay. And you can say, well, is it any more important than any other stone? And you can say, well, in of sorts, it is, because you're building your house based on this placement. That's the way I see this, and I think it's backed up in the data. I think what you'll see the Biden administration do is to go back to more of that Obama era model where they support it. They will take action based on it. But it's one of a multiple set of rights that they're not going to highlight exclusively. They're looking at hosting a community of democracies together. And that will, I believe, I hope, will have a religious freedom component, but it'll also have a free speech component and freedom of assembly component.
And can I just ask with that, and in the same very article, the tangible support given to projects on promoting freedom of religion or belief around the world. In the same article, we're led to believe that US aid projects for faith religious minorities around the world is being stopped at the moment. For example, it says, but weeks earlier, 2 days into the Biden administration, US aid rejected a project planned in Nigeria dedicated to providing a detailed accounting of Christian and Muslim persecution by jihadi terrorists, Boko Haram, and militant Fulani herdsmen, and others. So with regards to the approach then that you just outlined, now that you have the projects that were being funded through the US aid supporting religious freedom around the world have been stopped or suspended, does that mean there'll be less economic support for those projects around the world with the new administration?
Well, it yet to be seen, Raymond. Nigeria is a particular case. I fought for a long time to have this recognized as Christians being persecuted and Muslims being persecuted in various places, particularly Shia there. But the diplomatic apparatus from the United States doesn't want Nigeria seen through the lens of a conflict between Islam and Christianity. So they want to deny that that is a division point, which I think is impossible and not, I think it's denying the actual factual situation on the ground. But that's the diplomats' position. I say that too loosely, but that's a lot of the diplomatic corps' view. So I wouldn't doubt on that particular case, they were just backing up and taking the bureaucratic approach that was previously pursued, when a number of us were pushing to say, no, you got to elevate and see that a lot of the motivation in the fighting being used right now in Nigeria is between religious factions, and the terrorists specifically use religion as a tool to divide people. Doesn't mean you use the tool to divide people. You can use it to unite and work with people, but you shouldn't deny that, look, this is being used now and we've got to fight against it.
And when I saw it when I was the special envoy for the United Kingdom, with regards to Nigeria, to say that there is no persecution of individuals on their faith for the Christian community would be absurd. It is clearly a factor along with all the others, whether it's climate change or whether it's lack of security on the ground or the acts of terror, the terrorist organizations, Boko Haram. There are a number of factors, but clearly religion is a real factor, where in certain parts of Nigeria, the Christian community is being targeted because of its faith, if we look at all the different reports available. So with countries like Nigeria, you need to take that holistic approach and ensure that working with international partners, you can bring about some real change on the ground.
Yeah,
would that be a fair analysis?
Completely. And I just thought they were trying to be overly simplistic. And I understand that they don't want the Nigeria to start in a Christian-Muslim conflict.
Right.
I don't want them to start on that either. But to deny that it's part of the fuel for the conflict is just to deny the facts on the ground. And you and I are both trained as lawyers. You're used to assigning percentages of negligence in a particular car accident, where you were 20% negligent, he was 80% negligent. I'm not saying it's the only factor in Nigeria, but it is an undeniable factor in Nigeria.
And just clarification on this policy that we have. I was looking at a quote in the same article by Nina Shear from the Hudson Institute, and she said this new approach in the Biden administration is a major shift away from international religious freedom, moving away from even calling it religious freedom. Would you say that's got some merit, or would you say that's overemphasizing a different perspective?
Yeah, Nina's a great observer and excellent in the field. So I'm hard pressed to disagree with her. But I'm saying yet, let's give them some time. They haven't been in office very long. They're still getting their team put together. They're having to face the realities in the world, and they're having to then appraise and assess what the prior administration did as to what they want to continue and discontinue, even though publicly they're going to say everything Trump did was bad and we're not going to follow any of that. But then factually, you got to look at it and determine, well, they've continued the sanctions on China Trump put on. I think you got to give them some time to really figure out which direction that they really want to go and what they believe works and worked or didn't work in the prior administration.
And can I just say, Sam, whoever comes into that role, that's the ambassador at large, having been an envoy myself and being 11 years in Parliament, you get to meet with different parliamentarians and different diplomats around the world and different officials. I think they will have a real tough task to follow in your shoes in terms of what you did on freedom of religion or belief around the world, getting tangible results, getting those individuals in the last year released from around the world who are being persecuted for their faith, setting up an alliance of 32 member states, which is now bringing about real change, whether it's pushing on reforming blasphemy laws like Australia's doing, or whether it's with regards to the misuse of technology, which is what you're doing, and putting sanctions in place on China with the Uyghurs and in other European countries and the UK following suit after that. I think whoever comes in has got a tough task to follow in line with what you did in championing freedom of religion or belief around the world. So thank you to you on that.
Well, thank you. And it was a great honor. And I think it's the most important job I've ever held. It just because of its impact on billions of people around the world. But I had a strong administration behind me. Secretary Pompeo, Mike Pence, President, they were strongly supportive of this and saw it as this fundamental piece that could help the human rights project writ large. So my hope is they're going to come in with a strong person, and the Biden team at the high level, Secretary Blinken, the president, will support and back their push for religious freedom for all.
Yeah, I think in that year that we had together, and also I think with our other colleague, Josh Dumer from the Netherlands, you were the chairman and we were the two co-vice chairmen. I think we made some real difference on promoting freedom of religion or belief around the world in that time. And I think the alliance is something which will go from strength to strength in promoting FORB tangibly around the world as time moves on. Can I ask you another final question? You are co-chairing the International Religious Freedom Summit in 2021 in DC with Gail Menchen. Do you want to tell us something about that and what to expect from that international summit?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. This is a gathering of civil society groups from around the world that are focused on religious freedom issues. Gail Menchen, she chairs the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Husband, she's a Democrat. He's a Democrat U.S. Senator. And they're strongly supportive of this. And this will be a bipartisan meeting. It'll be global in its focus, but it's the focus is primarily to get the civil society and religious groups together around the banner of religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. And so we've got all sorts of various religious affiliated groups, all sorts of various politically affiliated groups that are in this. And we want this to be an annual meeting to where annually the civil society groups will gather together around this topic to push it. To me, we've got a nascent human rights global grassroots movement that's going. I'd love to see it follow the same track as the human trafficking global movement. There's a grassroots movement that pushes back on that now. We need a grassroots religious freedom movement. And this is meant to bring together these groups that push that. Yeah.
And you know, I think it's a fantastic initiative. And looking at what you did with the ministerial conference, the US hosted it for 2 years in a row. And I think you had over, one of them, you had over 100 foreign ministers from around the world at that ministerial conference. So with what you've done internationally at a governmental level, I think if that can be replicated through civil society and NGOs, which you're doing now, I think that's absolutely fantastic and will be great to get civil society interconnected like that in promoting FORB around the world.
Yeah, we had over 100 countries. We didn't have 100 foreign ministers, but I think we had 30 plus foreign ministers or their equivalents at that second ministerial. It was a phenomenal event. And it was the largest human rights event State Department had ever hosted. And we had to shut the doors 2 weeks out and stop registration because we were full. So there is a lot of interest and passion in this subject, and we need to build on that.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right. And I think, you know, and the other great thing about you, Sam, apart from being a brilliant ambassador and a great guy to work with, you're an honest politician. You corrected me when I said over 100 foreign ministers. Said, Raymond, no, not quite. But no, that is the great thing with working with you is, you know, you get things done and you know where you stand when you're working together on FORB. And the other thing that is something to look forward to, and you started it, is the International Ministerial Conference. You know, Poland had it this year. Brazil is doing it. Did it last year. Brazil is doing it this year. And the UK is doing it in 2022 as part of our foreign policy and defense review. But I just want to thank you for that, Sam, because the United States were working with countries to host that. And it was a real pleasure working with you to see if the United Kingdom could host that ministerial conference. And now they'll be doing it in 2022. But thank you for ensuring that rotation goes across the world in different parts, and the United Kingdom also having a chance to host that in 2022.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about the Brazilian one. I anticipate being there. I hope I can be at the UK one because different countries have different emphasis of relationships. They've got better relationships with some countries and poorer ones than what we do or others. And moving it around, you can take advantage of those better relationships to move the topic forward globally. I think Brazil is very excited about hosting it this year, the UK next year. And my hope is we'll continue to grow the global consensus and the global team willing to push on this topic.
Yeah, and I very much look forward to seeing you back in England very soon. You know, we want to see you over here. And just want to say thank you to all the fantastic work that you have done and the public service, but both as the ambassador at large and both as a senator and in Congress. I know freedom of religion or belief is part of your DNA, is what you believe and what you've championed. And I know you will continue to do it in and out of office at every level. And I know I speak for all the other envoys and ambassadors around the world who worked with you. You were a real champion for FORB and somebody who brought people together to champion this great cause, and wish you every success with the summit in July. Hopefully I'll be there at that. But if not, I look forward to seeing you back in the UK and continuing our work on religious freedom around the world. Sam, thank you so very much for the terrific work that you do and making time to speak to me today.
Oh, thank you, Ray. It's been a pleasure. It was a great pleasure working with you. And I really am delighted to see how much work the UK is doing on this topic. They've really, since that Turtle report, have really skyrocketed. And your leadership has been a key part of that. So I'm delighted because we need to see a lot of key countries in the world push on it. And you guys have been doing that and are doing it. Yeah, good to see you. God bless you, old friend. As I said one time to you, friendship is forever. So we'll continue.
And I look forward to seeing you with that George jersey. Thank you. All right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Raymond.